Oh, hello gang. For those coming new or old, this is effectively your James Bond reviews as I go through the films up until the last one that came out 5 years ago already, Spectre. For the purposes of these videos, I am Sir Hilary Bray, Baronet, OBE, CBE, GCFO and Bar. That is for those who are joining us via the Bond forum, and it's not sponsored by it, but it may as well be. bondandbeyond.forummotion.com. There you go. I have it favorited, so I never bother looking at the address. I'm not sure how these are going to work. They're going to be rather amateurish in appearance and probably structure. I tend to do videos since this lockdown started just off the cuff. You will get an idea possibly how my tours go on a tour bus when I was doing the job anyway. There is structure. I know what I'm going to say, what I want to talk about, but the thought process goes like this, much like the buses on Diversion. So in this first one, I think we'll do the first 4 Bond films because that's what I've watched. There isn't the energy or technicality to do all 4. I'm not having much to do 4 separately. I'm not having much luck at the moment. I'm uploading. I have a cheap free movie. Well, I say cheap. It's from the Microsoft Store. Free copy of Movie Maker 10, and so I don't have the funds spare really to buy the Pro, even though it's like £7 or whatever a month. I think I've got to check it out so that I can save projects. So lately, past couple of days, I can't save the project. Obviously, I go to save the video. It takes 3 hours if it's a long one, which this one might be, to format and upload, and then YouTube, it freezes at 95% processing, having technically uploaded, but you won't go further than that. So I've wasted 5 hours of my life. Nothing new there, but I'm just letting you know why it's being done as all 4. Now hopefully the music in the background won't detract. It'll probably give me a copyright claim. Ideally I'd like to have started each video with the Bond gun barrel, but I've had to get something called freemusicarchive.org. If no one cares for it, let us know, you precious few. Now I haven't gone through the Bond films like in order since 2015, and my ratings for my opinion on films have changed since. That's not self-abandoned Bond films. I watch HMSS every year, and I pick out Diamonds Are Forever, View to a Kill, whatever. But lockdown is a perfect excuse to get on with it, and you're wanting to know why the video isn't. So already I've done the first 4 films over the past 3 or 4 days, and it's Sean Connery. I like to do impressions of. Some people say I do a good one, most people say I don't. It's hard to imagine really that James Bond started in 1962 as a film. I mean, obviously the books had been around for around about 10 or 9 years beforehand. Ian Fleming lived to see his great creation hit the screen, and it's Dr. No is intriguing a film on its technicalities, I think. It's the first one, so there's nothing that came before it. There's no one necessarily that would be watching this film going, well, you know, so-and-so would have done a better job. And you read about who was considered or asked to be Bond. I think Michael Caine might have been, Roger Moore, Patrick McGowan, I think even not Timothy Dalton, Richard Todd, Rod Taylor. I think these were names floating around. Rod Taylor might be an interesting one. He certainly kicked himself when he saw Dr. No. A relatively unknown chap called Sean Connery turned up. He had been doing films now for a while. I mean, I'm pretty sure he'd been doing films since the early 50s. He moved like a killer cat. He had a look of Bond from the books, and that's the thing. He only had the books. Now, Thunderball was meant to be the first one, and as far as I understand, Sean Connery only bothered reading Thunderball because that was meant to be the film, but it wasn't, obviously. And Thunderball is another story in its own in the legal business. Now, Dr. No It's a short Bond film. It's 1 hour and 45 minutes. And I say short. Spectre, Skyfall, No Time to Die are all and will be over 2 hours by a country mile. I forget how long No Time to Die is going to be, but it's going to be the Lawrence of Arabia in length anyway of the Bond films. What I like about Dr. No, and that's essentially what these reviews are really, I suppose, is that it has things that the later films don't sort of do the same way. Terence Young, and I don't know if it was his decision alone, seemed to like sort of like a setup. So Bond, how you see the casino slash club that our unnamed SIS chap goes in to get Bond from, or the communications room at SIS, which is right out of the pages of Ian Fleming's books. It's featured prominently in the short story Living Daylights, there we go. I was going to say Property of a Lady, might well be, but it's mentioned in the books. I think it's on the 5th floor or the 8th floor. It's certainly above M's office on the 4th and Bond's. And that's something else, is that when Bond turns up at SIS, which I'm assuming this one is the Regent's Park headquarters, Bond walks past from the left 3 signs, and one I believe is a solicitor, another one is something else, and in the middle is Universal Exports. And in the books there was a landlady whose name I've forgotten, that would be in the ground floor, and she basically dealt with the letters that came saying, would Universal Exports be interested in exporting something? So I love seeing the communications room. I mean, it's very early 60s, and then that's the thing about Dr. No. It has this feel of what films did, film and look, apart from its locations, of what films were like in the late 50s, early 60s. So say, I don't know, from 1957 to 62, 63. Like, for instance, The League of Gentlemen with Jack Hawkins, or indeed Lawrence of Arabia, or Night to Remember, Sink the Bismarck. You know, films that were made at the period that I can think off the top of my head. And most of these films, like, I think from the looks of it, the first 3 Bond films had not a massive budget. They had a bigger budget probably than some films did. I mean, you know, I can't imagine going to Jamaica was terribly cheap, but where they can, they filmed here in Blighty, and so Goldfinger. You know, most of the Fort Knox set is here, and the Miami hotel scene is filmed on a stage here, whereas I think only set Cled Linda went over to was in Miami anyway. So, like TV series like The Saint at the time, which managed to go all around the world but stayed here in Britain, of course, they found ways to economic. I'm not drunk today. This is a proof. I'm going to prove how I do these off the cuff. Economical with things. The villain is not, to me, a standout villain, but that's the trouble with Bond film. You stop a chap on the street or a girl on the street and say, "What's a Bond villain? What's that and that?" They tend to name possibly an overblown villain, a cartoonish villain like Goldfinger is only famous to most people for that line, "I expect you to die." People don't think of Sorin from Future Kill necessarily. They certainly don't think of Koskov from Living Daylights, or Sanchez from the License to Kill. And they won't think of Dr. No. Now, Dr. No is not the worst villain, but there's nothing about him that stands out, other than the fact that he feels the need to go into Bond's bedroom after Bond's been knocked out and peels back the duvet. What he's looking for, whether he's got shortcomings in the trousers department, I wouldn't like to say. Presumably, he did it with honey, but who knows? And his death, though, is classic, what will become classic, that the Bond villains have to die in a rather grotesque way, and I suppose there's nothing worse than falling into boiling water. What I like about Bond in these early films is that he's a human, so to speak. There's no audience going, well, Bond's going to get out of this. If you've read the books, you know he would, but Dr. No was just another film made from another well-popular series of books or book, and if it had gone tits up, that's it. We would not be sitting here, you know, in the midst of a Bond from an... I really can't speak today. This is going well, isn't it? Take a breath. This is unopened, by the way. This is, I mean, I am going to drink this. This is a fantastic bottle of Terrafina. I've got a video about it, by the way, on this channel. Just look for it. Let's get this crap out there. So, anyway, just turn that down. That being said, you chaps probably can't hear me anyway. Dr. No's just got this basic, I mean, there's the gun barrel, of course, but there's no title song, and there's not really a soundtrack. John Barry did bits, but Monty Norman, who's still with us, I think he's about 90 odd now, 92, it was his birthday, I thought he did. And the legal battle a few years before in the late 90s between the two, yeah, Monty Norman did the Bond theme, but John Barry made the Bond theme. I mean, that's what I missed about the David Arnold Craig films, Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. Yeah, Bond's been rebought, is rebooted, and he's still a fresh agent or whatever. But the Bond theme, I didn't expect it constantly, like it is in Dr. No and From Russia with Love. But like that was what made me like Skyfall initially. That when Bond jumps on the train, and throughout the score, because it's Bond. The Bond theme is Bond, and Quantum of Solace and Casino Royale scores are just not my favourite. I like Arnold's Brosnan scores, don't get me wrong, but to me Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, they're interchangeable. I've listened to them several times to change my opinion, just don't care for it. Sorry chaps, if you do like them. We still live in a democracy until I become Lord Emperor. So Dr. No, it does the job on the tin. Honey Rider is a good Bond girl. Ursula Andress was a knockout back in the day. I never list her in my top 5. It's awful. And that's the thing. She's a Bond woman, isn't she? But I don't dislike her. She's not bottom 5. It's just my focus is a case that there are films sometimes that my focus goes somewhere else. So I guess I focus on Bond and Kroll, and Kroll is a fantastic character. All the superstitions and the like that, anyone would have on Jamaica, I'm assuming, that Fleming would know about, because he, as I say, is still alive in '62. And indeed, the Jamaica from what I've read anyway of '62 was not the Jamaica that Fleming would have known from before the war. Times were changing, and Jamaica with it. Nonetheless, Terence Young does a decent job. Somebody once said he was more Bond than Bond himself. He served in the Second World War in the Guards. He was at the Battle of Arnhem, Operation Market Garden. I believe he directed a film about it. Theirs Was the Glory in 1946, which used real life people. So check that out. I think it's on YouTube. So Dr. No gets a 9 out of 10. And oh shit, how can we forget Jack Lord? It is a shame that Jack Lord did not return as Felix. If only he didn't want that much money, I'm sure that would have helped. But we're lucky that he was the first Felix, I think. If Sec Linder, God bless him, had been the first one, or Norman Burton, also God bless him, who knows? Eh? And that's the beauty of it. Dr. No was a success. So next year, 1963, we get From Russia with Love. Now, From Russia with Love is one of the best films made. There's something about it that just pushes all the right buttons. There's a story, and I suppose it's true, like most stories, that when John F. Kennedy said From Russia with Love was one of his favourite books, the filmmakers chose to bump it up in the order. So it's tempting to think of what a late 60s Dr. No From Russia with Love had been like if, say, Thunderball and, I don't know, on Her Majesty's Secret Service had been first, because OHMSS was meant to be 67, but they couldn't find the right locations in time. So the two books got swapped around. But the whole Kennedy aspect, I think Kennedy lived to see From Russia with Love. I forget when From Russia with Love came out, but I'm pretty sure I read that he saw it in the White House cinema. So, yeah. It's, again, I mean, Tatiana's a good Bond girl. She's the archetypal Ian Fleming bird with a ring down. But again, not one of my favourite Bond girls, sadly. You're thinking, well, who is? Tracy, and that will set the cat amongst the pigeons. When I was little, I watched a pre-title sequence with my dad, like you'd do. I mean, I only remember watching the first Bond film I remember watching as a whole memory is Octopus, in 1992. And hopefully, when I get around to doing that video, I'll tell you a story about when I first saw it. Not a huge story, but for Russia of Love, I remember watching the pre-title sequence, or as we on the forum refer to it, and I will do so as best as I can now, the PTS, with my dad, and Bond's being hunted. Bond dies. I think I more or less said words to my dad along the effect. I was six, I think, at the time, 5 or 6. Well, there's no point really carrying on with the film. Now, I probably didn't say those words. I wasn't David Frost in those days. But the mask comes up. It's not Bond. You think, well, thank God for that. Then another title sequence without a song, but thunderous title sequence out there, and a classic title sequence out there. Now, like Dr. No, it's a short film, hour and 3/4, and like Dr. No, Terence Young, and like Dr. No, some fantastic shots of things. I mean, both Dr. No and From Russia of Love have got this thing where the 707, and they're both 707s from Pan Am in either film, touches down, which in From Russia of Love's case it's Istanbul, and there's some chap in a control tower going, so and so, your Pan Am whatever has just landed Istanbul, and it happens in Dr. No, albeit Jamaica and New York. Why we need to see that, I don't know, but it's nice little touches that no other Bond film bothers with after. Even Thunderball doesn't. One moment Bond's in London, the next shot you see him in the water with Paula on their boat anyway, meeting Domino. Connery is starting to grow into the role. Now, Bond Mania is there, but it's not what it became by the next year. And that's the beauty of the first 4 films, 62, 63, 64, 65, and then after that it was a 2-year interval, which was blown out of the water with License to Kill because of the troubles with MGM. What was it, 6 years by GoldenEye? And then we sort of picked up 2 years to Tomorrow Never Dies, 2 years to Old Is Not Enough, 3 years Die Another Day, then next year, because we need a new Bond and whatnot, 4 years Casino Royale, managed 2 years to Quantum of Solace, and you think, good times with that. No, 4 years to Skyfall, 3 years to Spectre, now look at it. At this rate, the new Bond after Craig will be starting when the next pandemic comes. From Russia of Love, as I say, ticks all the boxes. Things are coming together. Still got the gun barrel, still got the title, you got a fantastic title sequence, as I say. The locations, the gadgets are now starting to creep in, and albeit the briefcase. The Bond girl, of course, is there, the grotesque villain, Kleb, I'm going to refer to in this case. And the soundtrack is now, John Barry does a bit more with From Russia with Love. Again, the Bond themes he overuses. It's not needed for that hotel scene, let's be honest. Now, I guess there was nothing else. It wasn't John Barry who put it there properly, but you look at Goldfinger, which is a more rounded score, no Bond theme ad nauseum, or ad infinitum. Now, Tatiana's introduction, fantastic. Fantastic enough that subsequent would-be Bonds had to screen test with it. I chiefly think of Sam Neill, who says he was glad he didn't get the role. I love Sam Neill. Who else was asked for it, and we're lucky? James Brolin. Adam West was considered for On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Cubby must have been drunk at the time. But for Russia of Love, it has, it sips along at a decent enough pace. I mean, Corimbe is one of the best allies that James Bond had in the film, next to Columbo and For Your Eyes Only, and Draco, Archange Draco, in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. He's charismatic, he has pull, in terms of his boss, all his children seem to work, he has thousands of children, and he works with the gypsy community and all this stuff, and yes, he's a ladies' man, and if it wasn't for the fact he had a rather oversexed woman with him, he would have been blown up by the enemy in the film. As it was, sadly, Pedro Armadillas killed himself during filming because he learned he had terminal cancer. So knowing that, you notice that certain shots are done a certain way, like when Oliver Reed died during Gladiator, or Carrie Fisher even during The Last Jedi. Now, Corimbe has a couple good moments. I mean, all of them are good, but one is, of course, shooting the guy who tried killing him at the gypsy camp with the sniper rifle because he wants to get back at him, and indeed the gypsy scene. In fact, the gypsy scene is fantastically done in more ways than one. I mean, it's probably filmed at Pinewood or whatever, but Bond is accepted into the community, well, he's allowed to come in because he's a friend of Corinne. If he had just warmed up by himself, that would not have been the case. Then there's the girl fight, and you know, that would kick a lot of people off nowadays, wouldn't it? There'll be a feminist outcry, or outcry generally. But it's in the, I was going to say it's in the book, I haven't read the book for ages. The girls choreographed like no man's business. I think they were dancers. I'm tempted to say they were dancers, and they look very 60s in the sense that even though they're wearing rags and stuff and gypsy outfits, to me they look like they've just walked off Carnaby Street in a manner of speaking. I'm probably thinking things differently. And we've just had the belly dancer. Bond's face is a picture. Sweat is dribbling like mine would if an attractive woman was wiggling her you-know-what under my face. And then as soon as the girls go at each other, there'd only be one winner and only one alive, I believe, Barry's music kicks in, and it stokes up the tension of what is effectively, in my town on a Saturday night, a cat fight in Market Square at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then next thing you know, gunshot, music dies, the 007 theme kicks off, the thing that Barry introduced because of the whole, you know, he wanted his own theme without stepping on Monty Norman's. Now the 007 theme, before we press on out of rain noise, crops up in only a handful of Bond themes, and in From Russia with Love it's used twice that I can think of, Taking the Lecter and the Gypsy Camp, and each variation of it, be it in Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, Diamonds Are Forever and Moonraker, is different. There was some suggestion for Skyfall that it should come back, being the 50th anniversary Bond film, but I don't think it can ever come back. It's John Barry's piece of music. You know, the Bond theme itself has been used by David Arnold, Michael Kamen, Bill Conti, Marvin Hamlish, George Martin, Thomas Newman, and probably will be used to death by Hans Zimmer, and I keep forgetting Hans Zimmer's doing No Time to Die score. But the 007 theme, its variations are incredible. Dun, 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 dun. And it stokes up tension. There's something heroic about it. It sounds like it could be in a western in some respects. And Connery in For Russia with Love is incredible. Like Dr. No, there's subtle facial expressions. Like in Dr. No, he has phoned, he's just landed in Jamaica. He phones, I guess it's the governor mansion, and says, "You didn't send a car for me, did you?" And they go, "No, basically we didn't." And Bond goes, and he hangs up, and as he puts the phone down, there's this grim, you have to watch it, and you know, looks of revulsion and disdain, like when he meets Dr. No, or From Russia with Love, when he meets Nash, who's of course Robert Shaw's Grant. And I never used to like Sean Connery as Bond when I was little. I always liked Timothy Dalton, weirdly enough, or George Lazenby, and that gives you an indicator of where we're going. But Connery's Bond is excellent compared to what we have now, anyway. And Rosa Klebb, as I say, is a grotesque Ian Fleming villain. She's the brains of the operation. She's doing all the thinking. She's doing all the organising. Red Grant is just the hired muscle, really, and how, isn't he? I mean, he's a killing machine. Bond is a blunt instrument, but Red Grant is that and then some. He's a great white shark compared to Bond. And Robert Shaw is brilliant. Feckle lines in the film. And a physique I would kill for. I wouldn't necessarily care for Rosa Klebb slapping me in the chest. But Klebb, you know, she's basically hinted at as being a lesbian. Whether or not she is, I don't know. But she's a creepy villain, and at the end she has to try and kill Bond herself. And the irony, of course, is that she's killed by Tatiana. Do you not forget, remember who you are speaking to? Again, economical with the money. It's in Istanbul, it's in Turkey, but then next thing you know, you're in the Scottish Highlands, aka the Adriatic in northern Italy, because they end up in Venice. They tacked on the helicopter thing for another piece of action, so that film could realistically have been 1 hour and 20 minutes, which is incredible. And it was taken from North by Northwest. The only other thing is that Cary Grant didn't have a gun, and I bet he wishes he did. One of the Bond liners that goes under the radar is, well, I say one of their aircraft is missing, wouldn't you? And it's not the funniest line, but it's hints to the old war movie, one of our aircraft is missing. The Spectre boat scene is, I believe, also in the Highlands, and what a way to go. Blowing up and oily and all this stuff. Sorry, I forget when I do this on my phone, messages pop up. Not necessarily remembering all that I did in my review, but wow. Strike by the iron is hot, you move on to Goldfinger. And Goldfinger is a film that nowadays I don't think is as good as people make out, but then Goldfinger is the film that probably set the impression in people's minds forever and a day. The bloody white tuxedo when Bond strips out of his swimsuit, the funny name of the Bond girl, Pussy Galore, the cartoonish Bond villains, Goldfinger and Oddjob, and the evil plan, the great set by Ken Adam, the Fort Knox set, the goons, the henchmen, and all the rest of it. Goldfinger puts in, and as I say, it's the first rounded soundtrack. The opening of the film is of course pre-titles, PTS, and Bond back in action is a funky little tune, or at least a jazzy little tune. Again, great locations, but again mostly filmed over here, and right down to the fact that the car chase is in and around Pinewood. One of the most surreal moments in the early Bond films at any rate is when Bond thinks he's going to get clean away back over the frontier, and Granny comes out with I think it's a Schmeitzer or some such, blazing away like hell for leather. I think Fleming, if he had lived to see that, would have been tickled by it. Certainly it's one of Connery's best what the fuck expressions is going down. And the location for the Swiss Alps, excellent. It is at the Swiss Alps, but Bond doesn't seem to have much luck with women in cars, in the sense that, you know, like him on the Majesty's Secret Service book, you know, nothing goes side Bond more than being overtaken by a beautiful girl. But that's the thing. He is in Goldfinger. He is in On the Majesty's Secret Service, of course, and he is technically in GoldenEye. And technically he's taken for a ride by Fiona and Thunderball. Aside from Fiona, he's overtaken by women who are irritated, it seems, that he's driving rather cautiously. They all honk their horn at him and then blast past him. 3 times he does that. And the fact he's driving Aston Martin in each scene is irrelevant. The fact that Aston could take on a Ferrari 355 in 1995 is something else entirely. Now, pretty much, you have the best Bond song of the series, some would say. It's big, it's brassy, it's loud. And that's the soundtrack overall. The best track on the soundtrack, in my humblest opinion, is Oddjob's Pressing Engagement. But you listen to it, it's a listen to heaven in some respects. Dawn Raid on Fort Knox builds up the tension, and it's also a loud track, and it's brilliant as well. And the Goldfinger instrumental. Now, Honor Blackman sadly died a couple of weeks ago. I mean, she had a good age, 92 I believe she was. And, you know, Phoebe Waller-Bridge has said this, that and the other about the Bond women, and Bond himself, for No Time to Die, from the sounds of Barbara Broccoli, old Babs has had her own idea of Bond and the characters since she took over, and some would say they're not what they should be, but you know, times change as far as decades go. But Pussy was, for the era, a fantastic character. You know, alright, she eventually succumbs to Bond's charm, but she goes down fighting. I mean, the scene sometimes makes me uncomfortable in how Bond sort of forces himself on her. He doesn't rape her, and he doesn't, you know, she fight, but it's not a scene I dislike, but like Bond with, what's her name? And, Maud Adams' character in Man with the Golden Gun. I mean, he didn't really care for Roger Moore, she certainly didn't. and but then Bond snapped Tatiana for Usher of Love and Tracy, Merchant of Cess, and I think he did Tiffany. So Bond is physical with women, but he doesn't beat them up. I think he tried with Mayday, but that didn't work out. And with Pussy, and Pussy is a strong, independent woman. She was feminist before that was a thing, and she has her own women working for her. And she's probably turned down Goldfinger. In the book, it's more on the nose, as you can do in the late 50s, that she's a lesbian, and again she gets turned by Bond. It's hinted at in the film. I always got the impression she was probably bisexual, or she just didn't like men entirely and was not mad on anyone. Maybe she was asexual. Honor Blackman played her much like Tracy did. Now, Diana Rigg did Tracy, and it's no coincidence that both of them were the first two girls on the Avengers to sidekick Steed. And until Honor Blackman passed, they'd all outlived Sir Patrick Macnee, the girls. We still got I've forgotten her name now, Lara King, and we got Joanna Lumley, and I suppose you technically got Irma Thurman, but Kathy Gell sort of shines through, much like Mrs. Pill does with Tracy. I suspect Diana Rigg had not been cast in that film. If it was Catherine Deneuve, then there would not be the punch up or the karate chops that Tracy implements. So Honor Blackman did a job, and Pussy's one of the best Bond girls. Her intro nowadays is done to death, Must Be Dreaming and all this stuff. But she's a proper woman, as is Fiona Volpe in Thunderball. Now Goldfinger, I've kind of had enough of it in recent years. It's not a Bond film if you're looking for one sort of close to the feel of the books. From Russia with Love is Dr. No is to a point. Goldfinger, Bond Mania now taken off, and Goldfinger himself is a decent enough villain. Oddjob does well with not saying anything and conveys a lot of intense physicality, and he manages to kill he at least kills the two sisters now I think about it, Jill and Tilly. When I was little, I saw that get a woman painted gold, and they say M saying they left they didn't do the smaller the back, or Bond does. Now she suffocated, and I think, crikey, I'm not doing that. The gassing of the gangsters is not a moment people like for obvious reasons. I would have thought that for a few people watching the memories of the Holocaust firsthand was still at hand. I'm not saying that that's why it's not a good scene, but for 1964, it's fairly on the nose. Films in those days, you didn't have blood and guts explode. If you watch The Longest Day in '62, you don't see arms and limbs being flung apart, and yet when D-Day is done 35 years later for Saving Private Ryan, you see all that and more. And it's a similar thing with love scenes. Now Bond's only really gone far for Die Another Day, but you don't get that in those days. So I guess gassing a bunch of men is it, but then conversely, 20 odd years later, for the mine massacre in Future Kill, people didn't like it, said it was too violent, but then there was White in line with Sauron being a psychopath. So they needed that scene, I suppose, in Goldfinger, and it did allow the fact that Solo could get away from Bond thinking, yes, I can let somebody know I'm in trouble, and no, because he gets scrapped, more or less. Linda's not the best Felix, but then the offer option was the chap he played cards with. I forget the actor's name now. I think it was Austin Reed and Austin Childers. He's only in the film a couple of minutes, so in my memory is what it is. But he's not the worst Bond. But the trouble is he's old enough that he's kind of not on par with Connery, whereas Lord was and Rick Van Nutter in Thunderball. It's a good Bond, it's a good film, but I think if Terence Young had done it, it would have been a bit more polished. I don't think we would have had the gadgets on the DB5 maybe. And that's the beauty of Goldfinger. The DB5 is brand new before it's being destroyed, which I strongly suspect is going to be again in No Time to Die. So, quickly and briefly, I suppose, onto Thunderball. When I was little, I didn't care for this film. It was slow, it was sluggish, it all happened underwater, and all I remember when I was little really is the Falcon crash landing, the Fowl dying in the cockpit, and the street chase when Bond goes into the toilet to sort out his leg. Now I like it. I always skip the song. I mean, you know, the lyrics are useless, like most songs are. He strikes like Thunderball. Well, thunder doesn't even strike to begin with. I don't mind Tom Jones. The song's just not my. And the soundtrack, unfortunately, I mean, it's a fantastic soundtrack. But there are if you listen to it, say in a single sitting or watch the film, you're sort of conscious of that. You always seem to get the same backing. I think, you know, like Peter Hunt, John Barry was trying to do the best he had. I mean, I think the film, the final product, was a lot longer a film than we get. And the film's 2 hours 5, and I'm pretty sure I've heard that the original cut was 3 hours maybe. So God knows what was there that, you know, Peter Hunt had to sit down and go, right, let's cut this thing. And Peter Hunt, by the way, directed On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and he did the editing for the first few Bond films. And Thunderball's the first one when you notice this editing, you know, the rapid cuts, the speeding up, like in the PTS. And the PTS, that's one of the best pieces of music, Chateau Flight. You know, it's like a really intense Bond thing. You don't really hear in the film until For You to a Kill during the fight in Stacey's house. And the thing is about that film, the soundtrack release is crap. Even when they did the expanded 2003, they didn't bother with For You to a Kill or Moonraker. License to Kill, but as far as John Barry scores go, Moonraker and For You to a Kill, please. So the PTS, like it does in most film sets at a pace. Physicality, fast car editing, big brassy soundtrack, Bond punching a woman, and then next thing you know, you realise it's actually a man dressed up as a woman. Dear old Bob Simmons, Connery stunt, well, many person stunt doubles in the Bond films. He was the chap who actually did the gun barrel for, was it the first 3 films? Really, really Madden Defoe. You shouldn't have opened that door by yourself, or Burfill. And then next thing you know, Gadget, flipping CPAT. We'll skip the song. And you get Terence Young, you know, touches like the first shot of Largo in the street and the office set for the displaced person office, and you skip that and you get the RAF briefing. Very authentic, really. I mean, it looks like it was filmed in a RAF briefing room. The trouble is with Thunderball, it's in the grips of Bond mania. I think Connery was starting to have enough of the film by then, and you're left with, you know, a film ripe for parody. They all were from the start, but Thunderball has the villains meeting round a table whilst the head villain is stroking a cat, and Austin Powers whipped it off brilliantly, and then the title sequence with the women swimming up and down. Spy Hard. Just watch Spy Hard's title sequence, which was about 20 years after Thunderball. There's a lot, and then at the end when the Royal Navy are coming to rescue the situation, a shell in the Disco Flante, the black-clad goons, and that's, yeah, they're all wearing black. I mean, Dr. No, they did From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, but Thunderball, it seemed it was like it was all, and then Bond's being swept up by the gadgets. This was one thing that Peter Hunt said when he was making On Her Majesty's Secret Service, is that by then Bond was more or less either swallowed up by gadgets or they were overtaking things. So On Her Majesty's Secret Service was bringing Bond back to basics in more ways than one. And it looks like Connery sometimes is not struggling, but I think there's so much gadget and stuff downstairs. But it's a good film. I give it 8, 10. I forgot to say I give From Russia with Love a 9 and Goldfinger a 7, but sorry. It's got Paula's death, Bond's ally, is always heartfelt. It's very brief on screen because Bond doesn't hang around. He looks in through the door. She's slumped in the seat having taken cyanide. Turns around, faces grim. He's off to kick some ass on his way out. Well, he's got to get out first, never mind kicking ass. She's an attractive woman, isn't it? She was back in the day anyway. And then you've got the late Claudine Auger, who played Domino. The dubbing, I think, takes away from her performance. Not massively, but I kind of wish you could hear her speak. I mean, maybe like with the actor who plays Largo, Adolfo Celi, it's a case of the fact that they need to dub because English is probably good, but it's not, you can't hear him properly. She's another bird with a ring down, as Fleming described Tracy on IC's Secret Service. And she has emotion. She finds out her brother's been murdered by the man that's supposedly her guardian. And the best Bond girl for a country mile is the villains of the piece, Fiona Folpay. I mean, when you first see her, my God, things are on display. It feels like her hair is a flaming red, of course. And she, again, like Pussy, is a character ahead of her time in some respects. She is the brains of the operation. It might be, Largo's meant to be the villain, and he does all the heavy work, like getting the bomb and moving the bomb. But she seems to be in charge. She's wearing the trousers, and she bosses the men around, and she doesn't like Bond from the off. When she picks him up in the car by coincidence. I mean, she just happened to be driving down it, and she goes like hell for leather, and Bond is visibly unnerved by it. But then when he gets out and says, "This is my hotel," she goes, "Well, it's mine as well." And he goes, "Yeah, fancy." And then he comes back at some point. I think it's after Paula's death, and she's in the bath, like you do. And they, of course, have a moment, to put it mildly, and they go to leave, and it's a case of Bond really falling for a trap, I suppose. I think, though, Bond at the back of his head knew she wasn't kosher. He was probably waiting to leave the hotel to deal with her, but her goons got there first. And they have a brilliant exchange where he's, you don't think I enjoyed that, do you? Basically, I did that for King and Country. And she's like, oh, James Bond always assumes that, he only has to make love to a woman, and he hears a heavenly crier. And it's a brilliant exchange that, Phoebe Waller-Bridge should watch, because, I'm willing to bet No Time to Die is going to have exchanges that will have me squirming on my seat. The trouble is with Thunderball, it does seem to lag in places, maybe because of the cut went on for ages. The underwater scenes are not a bad thing. I mean, the trouble with the book, is close to the book because the book was written to be a film. But they do tend to hold things up, and I don't think you need all of what you see. And that's where the music gets a bit samey. I mean, John Barry does his best to make it interesting. And then, of course, at the end it all kicks off. The Marines drop in, and there's a punch-up with the 007 theme, which appears, it appears 3 times on the album, anyway. And the editing is to the max, because by that point I think Peter Hunt had a nervous breakdown and had enough. Fiona's death is brilliant, and you're thinking, well, that's weird. The street chase, not until and only for Her Honour Majesty's Secret Service, Bond seems to be generally in fear of his life. He generally seems to be, this was still when people probably went into a cinema thinking, right, Bond's going to get out of the film all right, and then there'll be a moment in the film where they go, well, hang about, he's not, he could die here. And Connery looks a little bit worried, like Lazenby did on his way to the ice rink, and like Lazenby on his way to the ice rink, he's turning over like that, turns forward, there's a guy, his expression of fright, he's been startled. Lazenby does that with the bear. And the music is the 007 theme, which you might hear in the background there. And indeed, I think that's the music for the end of the film, but it ramps up the tension. And then Bond goes into the toilet. This is clean. I have hankies daily. Gets the old hanky, wraps it around the old leg, and, And he goes onto the dance. He grabs a woman to go onto the dance floor because all of a sudden the goons are coming in. Turns around, Fiona's there. Shit, says Bond's face. This is it. He's busy trying to get away from her, also dancing, which I'd be focused on, and looking at the goons, where's the shot going to come from? And these people are not, these people are not worried about shooting him in front of the crowd. And what I like is that the song, Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which I think was meant to be the main song, it's there as a dance music, you got a drum beat, and all of a sudden, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang's faded, the drum, and then, and then, as soon as the shot fires, she of course slumps, and the Kiss Kiss Bang Bang returns. It's an incredible piece of music you have to listen to. I mean, I think the track's literally called Death of Fiona. And then after that, the film slugs along for a few minutes, and then it goes into the climax. Yeah, I give it a solid 8 out of 10. It could be done with being refined. I think if it had been the first Bond film, it would have been a much more polished film, and without all the gadgets. And that's the trouble now with Bond. We're now in that part of the world where, with the exception of on the Majesty's Secret Service through to For Your Eyes Only maybe, Bond is at the rim of his gadgets. Now, what was I going to say? Film's 55 years old this year, incredibly, and try and watch it on Blu-ray. It must be alright. I mean, some of the on the VHS I've got from 2000 and well, it must be 2 because it goes up to Die Another Day. The image isn't too good. So chaps, and Sophie, I'm struggling with my breath lately. I only have to do any exertion. I'm sounding like I'm twice my age. So I'm going to put the link, if I remember when I get round to it, because the format is going to take ages, to the forum if you're not on it at the end, and indeed in the YouTube description thingy. Go there if you like Bond, even if you don't. Well, if you don't like Bond and spam the forum, we'll have to sort you out, so to speak. If not, wait until the film comes out, No Time to Die, which is in November. I was meant to be doing walking tours with the company, the tour guide company I worked for. I'm on furlough because of this bloody virus, and I'll try and come back to you and live twice. I'm not watching OHMSS for this Bondathon. I only watched it a fortnight ago on Blu-ray and at Christmas, and I don't want to. I've seen it loads of times in my life, but nowadays I'll try and space it apart, and they won't all be as long as this because I've been covering 4 films, and hopefully by then my body will be working properly, so I'm not gasping for air. So for those from the forum, the likes of say CJB, Karnas, Fields of course, and I'm trying to think who we've got posting regularly, and Python, and AMC, Hornet, and Booty, Blunty. How can I forget Blunty? You're thinking to yourself, he's had a stroke now. He's just, he's falling apart. If you have watched it, thank you, chaps. Now you have an idea of what old Hilly sounds like and looks like. No, the barbers aren't open around here, as you might imagine. So that's your first Chez Hilly, and I've been Hilly. You've been Bond fans, and let's see how it goes, eh?